Today we're going to talk about the Pythagorean theorem. So, Pythagorean theorem, I bet you will see it on iLearn. Chromebook should be closed. We should be looking at the teacher. She's just as pretty as Addison. Come on, Burton.
Yeah, accidentally.
Yeah, she's doing my paper.
All right, so in a right triangle. So what's it mean by a right triangle?
90 degrees.
No, 90-degree angle. So in a right triangle, the two sides adjacent. So what's the word adjacent mean?
Same.
No, next to each other.
What? You didn't write that on the board. Thank you very much.
Okay. So in a right triangle, the two sides that are adjacent to that right angle are known as the legs of that triangle. And those legs of that triangle will be labeled A and B. It doesn't matter which one's A, it doesn't matter B. Which one's B? Here's the right angle. The sides that are next to that right angle are called the legs. They're the A and the B.
Can you make B A instead of baby?
I'm sorry, I already said that. All right. The side opposite from the right angle. So the side that is across from that right angle, so across or opposite, is called the hypotenuse.
I feel like just
Or C. I don't need comments. So hypotenuse is what we call the longest side of the triangle. And it's the side that's across from that 90-degree angle. That is the hypotenuse.
doesn't the stem hypo mean under?
All right, the hypotenuse is always the longest side. So just like I said, it is always the longest side of the triangle. The other two sides will always be shorter. So if I know that the hypotenuse is 10, what could the other sides possibly be?
4 and 6.
4 and 6, 3 and 2, 5 and 7. But as long as those other two numbers are smaller than 10, you know you're probably doing it right. If one of the two sides are bigger than 10, you did something wrong, because the hypotenuse will always be the longest side. All right, the Pythagorean theorem. They made this for us to be able to figure out what a missing side might be. So it tells us how the side lengths of the right triangles are related. And in any right triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. What's sum mean?
Add.
Add. What's it mean to find the square of a number?
Times it by itself.
Times it by itself. So when I'm talking about square, I'm talking about the squares of something. That means like 5 squared, or 3 squared, or 7 squared, or 10 squared. And squared means times itself. So what is 5 squared?
25.
25. What's 10 squared? 100. What's 3 squared?
6.
9. What's 12 squared?
144.
144. What's 7 squared?
49.
What's 11 squared?
121.
Okay. All right, so we will use the formula, and this is one of the, well, probably the most important thing for this whole unit. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So that is so important, that needs to be memorized. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So it says, when I square both sides, when I square both sides of the triangle and add them together, it will always equal the hypotenuse squared. Now, a lot of people have issues with the finding of a missing number. Squaring and what are opposites of each other?
Square root.
Square rooting. So if I say, what is 10 squared, you would tell me? 100. And what's the square root of 100? 10. What is 8 squared? 64. What's the square root of 64? 8. Square rooting and squaring are opposites. They undo each other, just like adding and subtracting are opposites, multiplying and dividing are opposites. There's not something else we're going to use today. All right, so this next little section says label A, B, and C on each of the triangles below. So we said it doesn't matter which leg is A or B. The only one that matters is C, the hypotenuse. So if I want to say that this is A and this is B, or this is B and this is A, that's fine. But those are the two sides that are adjacent to the 90-degree angle, which means that side that is across from that angle is always the hypotenuse. On the next one, I would probably start with labeling the hypotenuse, since I know that it's across from that 90-degree angle, and then it doesn't matter which one's A or B. The only one that matters is the C. All right, looking at the third one. The side across from the right angle is C. The other ones are A and B. You label that last one. All right, so the one across from the right angle is C. The other ones are A and B. Or you can put A here and B here. It doesn't matter. It's matter for C's. Are there any questions about labeling the parts of the triangle? All right, moving down into the first examples, it says use the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side length in each right triangle. Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. What's it mean by round to the nearest tenth?
The point.
So like 1 decimal point. 1 decimal point. Tenth is 1 decimal. All right, so looking at number 1, it doesn't tell us the right angle, or does it?
I don't even see a right angle.
It doesn't, but we should know where the right angle goes based off the picture. This right here, do you think this is the longest side or a leg? The longest side, which means our right angle fits in right there. Okay, so I'm missing C. I'm missing the C here. So that means that 3 and 4 are my A and my B. Doesn't matter which one you label A, doesn't matter which one you label B. But I'm going to plug them in the Pythagorean theorem. And you are showing your work. I do not just want an answer on your paper. Everybody hear that? Okay. All right, so the formula says A squared. Well, what did I label A to be? 3. So 3 squared plus B squared. What did I label B to be? 4. So 4 squared equals C squared. So that's me plugging it in the formula. And then what is 3 squared? 9. So 9, 4 squared? 16. And 9 plus 16 is? 25 equals C squared. Now, that is not the answer.
We have to square.
Because we have to get rid of the squared. So the opposite of squaring is square rooting. So I'm going to square root that squared to cancel it out. So C equals 5.
That's not Python.
All right. So looking at number 2. So it looks like my right angle is right there. Because it couldn't be there because it's not a right angle, and it obviously couldn't be there. Okay? So these are my 2 legs, my A and my B. It doesn't matter which one. And then my C. So A squared, so 24 squared, plus B squared, so 7 squared equals C squared. 24 squared is 576. 7 squared is 49.
That's 125.
So I'm going to get 625 there equals C squared. All right, then to get rid of that squared, I'm going to square root it. So C equals 25. All right, I'm gonna let you all do number 3, round to 1 decimal point. You forgot how to do a square root on your calculator? You hit second and then the x squared button. One decimal place for your answer. Thank you. You have to put that in the book. Yeah, I said round it to 1 decimal place. All right, so once again, if you can't find it, shh, it's right here. Here's the second button. This x squared right above it in blue is the square root button. So second, x squared, that'll pull up the square root, and then type your number, enter. All right, so this is my A, my B, I'm finding C. So 12 squared plus 7 squared equals C squared. So that's 144 plus 49 equals C squared. Is that 193? And then square root that, and we got 13.9. Does anybody need help with their calculator?
No.
Okay, so on all of these, we found the hypotenuse. Going to the back of the paper, we may be finding a leg, we may be finding a hypotenuse, we don't know until we look at the problem. So on number 4, I'll tell you that your right angle is right here. Okay? So it says use the Pythagorean theorem to find the missing side length in each triangle below. And it tells you that you're finding the side length anyway. So, all right, so I might label this side length A, but I know that this is the hypotenuse, so I have to label it C. I have to. So I'm finding B. I don't know what B is. Okay. So I'm going to plug in what I know. So I know that A is 5, so 5 squared plus B squared equals C squared, and I know that C is 13 squared. All right, so 5 squared, that's 25. 13 squared, that's 169. Does anybody know what we should do next? Right here.
Subtract 25.
Subtract the 25 because we're solving it for B, so I've got to isolate my B squared. So I'm subtracting 25. So that's B squared equals 144. And then I'll square root that to get B by itself. So square root of B squared cancels out, and I get B equals. All right, I'll do it again so we can see it one more time. Alright, so looking at number 5, here's my right angle. What do we want to label the 6, A or B?
B.
B, okay, we'll put a B there this time. Which means I'm finding A. But I know that the 10 is the hypotenuse, so that has to be the C. That's the only one that matters. So then it's A squared plus B squared, but we said B is going to be 6, so 6 squared equals C squared, just 10. So that's A squared plus 36 equals 100. I'll subtract the 36. So that's A squared equals 64. And then the square root of 64 is 8. All right, I'm gonna let you all do number 6, and once again, round to 1 decimal place. Alright, so I put minus the A and the C, and I found the B. So that was 16 squared plus B squared equals 24 squared. Alright, so 24 squared is 576. 16 squared is 256. Subtracted 256. So that's B squared equals 320, is that right?
Yep.
And then square root that, and we get
17.9.
17.9. Are there any questions about finding the hypotenuse? Okay, moving on to some word problems with this. I will tell you this, because they don't have a picture of a triangle, it always seems to make it harder. But I always draw a picture whether it says to or not. So it says a rectangular pool. So I know I'm going to draw a rectangular pool. At Andy's gym measures 25 by 50. So I'm going to put 25 by 50. I always like to draw a picture. How many meters would Andy need to swim in order to swim diagonally across the pool? So he wants to swim diagonally across the pool.
2 triangles.
Wow.
Doesn't that make it a lot easier? And look, if I take my eraser,
No.
there's my triangle. So it looks like I'm solving it for the C, the hypotenuse. So my A, my B, my C. So 25 squared plus 50 squared equals C squared. So 25 squared is 625. 50 squared is 2500. Add them together. So that's 3125 equals C squared. And then I'll square root that. And it looks like we have to swim 59.9 meters. 55.9. Is that what I said? You said 50. Sorry, I wrote 55.9. All right. All right, we're gonna draw a picture for the next one too. All right, so it says a pole vaulter rested a 17-foot pole against the wall. So here's my wall. Right, here's my wall. He rested a pole. When you rest something against the wall, it's a diagonal. So he takes this 17-foot pole and he rests it against the wall. It says that that pole hit 14 feet up the wall. So this length right here is 14 feet. How far from the wall is the bottom of the pole? So how far from the wall is the bottom of the pole? Look at those pictures. They just help so much.
Why'd you put that?
Because it's asking me how far from the wall is the bottom of the pole. So I know that that's what I'm finding. And then I'm going to go back and label ABC. So this is the hypotenuse, so it's clearly going to be the C. One side length is 14, the other side I don't know, so I'll just call them A and B. So again, it doesn't matter which one's A, doesn't matter which one's B, the only thing that matters is that C is the hypotenuse. So I'm going to let you all solve that. One decimal place.
They want to find the diagonal, right? Can't find it.
Well, maybe they don't have one.
Maybe.
Guys, we're not, no.
Why do I use this as white? We are not starting this. This music like 40 times in LA. And you're back here getting nasty. Is that really loud?
All right, so my A squared plus my B squared equals my C squared. So that's A squared, I think that's 196, plus 196 equals 289. Is that right? Anybody?
Yeah.
All right, so 289 minus 196. So that's A squared equals 93. Square root 93. And I get that side
9.6.
is 9.6, and that's B. Yeah, 9.6.
We're already doing word problems. How do you know this is no.
All right, the next one applies knowledge of area and perimeter. Okay, how do you find area of a rectangle or a circle, or a rectangle or a square? I mean, length times width. How do you find perimeter or something? You add up all the sides. So it tells us what is the area of the largest square, and they give us a triangle, but they put squares on it. And they're telling us that the area of this square is 36. So what would one side length be if the area is 36? 6, because I know that area of a square is side times side, because squares have the same length. So what number times itself makes 36, and that's 6. All right, the area of the square at the bottom is 64. So what number times itself makes 64? 8. And then it's asking me to find the area of that other square. So we first have to find the hypotenuse. So everybody find the hypotenuse. Remember that the question asks us to find the area of the other square.
I just like area. Same size, right?
All right. So 6 squared plus 8 squared equals c squared. So that is 36 plus 64, which is 100 equals c squared. So c is 10. So this is 10. But the question says, what is the area of the largest square? So the area of the largest square is what? 10 times 10, which is 100. And that's in, it says units. So my answer is 100 there. All right, number 10. If the area of square 1 is 25, so they're telling us the area of this one is 25, the area of square 2 is 16, what is the perimeter of square 3? So first of all, I've got to find that. So I want you all to find that. Take what we did on the last one so that you can find the side lengths.
What's your favorite thing to teach?
I don't know why. I don't know why.
It does. It kind of does.
That's an algebra one.
Is it about reference? What about one?
Yeah, you can take APs, and then you get college credit. If you get, or if you don't want to go to college, you get it. Can we just like put P as a third?
All right, so you should know that the hypotenuse is 5. This side is 4. So this is A and C. So 4 squared plus B squared equals 5 squared. So that's 16 plus B squared equals 25. Subtract the 16. So B squared equals 9. So B equals 3. So this is 3. But it's asking me for the perimeter. So 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3 is 12. Because it asked me for perimeter that time. It did not ask me for the area.
Something like this.